Dash dash dash. Hey guys. Just informing you that this is in Kellen's POV and it continues from the bio of this fanfic. Dash dash dash. I shook my head. You're not a teacher, I laughed. The tanned person kept a serious look on his face. I slowed down my laugh. Wait. You're serious? I tilt my head in confusion. My friends Ollie and Andy came up next to me. Well, Ollie's real name is Oliver but we call him Ollie for short. Same with Andy, his actual name is Andrew. Ollie stood to the left of me while Andy stood to the right. They basically followed me everywhere like that. I found it odd at first but then started to realize that I was like a leader to them. Some sort of king. Normally Ollie and Andy were like leaders to me since I was the sensitive one, but I guess things change. The tan-looking guy put his hand out and smiled, waiting for one of us to shake his hand. I was normally rude to students so no one can get to know me and shit, but I was way ruder to teachers. I hated their guts. The only people I am like a little nice with is Ollie and Andy. It went the same way. The only person they were nice to was me and themselves. I guess we were different from everyone. He stood there awkwardly. Ollie and Andy obviously didn't shake his hand because I didn't give them permission to. They never did anything unless I told them to. I decided to be a bit nice since the teacher still hasn't said a word to me yet, so I couldn't really read him. I shook his hand quickly so our hands can escape. Nice to meet you, I'm Mr. Fuentes, he smiled. Kellen, I said shortly. Quinn, I added in fast. I was guessing I was speaking too fast so I decided to re-say it. Kellen Quinn, I did a little friendly smile. Ollie and Andy looked at me and I nodded. It got a bit annoying sometimes when they act like this. I mean, it's cool being in charge, but to have them even ask to introduce themselves to a teacher was a little too much. Oliver Sykes, he grinned. Ollie for short. Andrew Bierstack, he smirked. Andy. Ollie and I always make fun of Andy's last name because we were immature and it sounded like Balsack, so we ended up bursting into laughter when he said Bierstack. Andy rolled his eyes and burst into a small giggle. The teacher gave us a small confused look. Or should I say Mr. Fuentes? Every teacher was the same to me though, so I just called them teacher. So what class do you teach here? I tried to make some conversation. Mainly just to read him because every time a new person enters this building, student or teacher, I try to read them. It's just a hobby, I guess. I found it funny that no one could really read my group and we all just were labeled trouble and that's all they knew. Everyone in the school, even ourselves, forgot we had feelings. I was staring deeply at his face, wondering why he looked so young for a teacher. I can tell Ollie and Andy were wondering the same thing. Guidance counseling, detentions, lunch duty, and lastly English. This school is so low on teachers, they make each teacher do too many jobs. I mumbled under my breath, not realizing I said that thought out loud. Another thing that normally got my group and I in trouble was not thinking or thinking out loud. Mr. Fuentes just nodded because he actually agreed with my statement. So far reading this teacher was different because he seemed just like a student. I kept glaring at Ollie and Andy for them to speak cause they kept staring at me asking for what they can do. We had staring conversations all the time. We can pretty much read each other just by eyes, which was a good thing so people never knew what we were saying or thinking to each other. I gave them one of those glares that showed I was annoyed. They knew I was annoyed that they kept asking to talk instead of just talking, so Ollie started some convo. Can I ask how old you are? His accent was hard to understand most of the time, but I was used to it. I don't know why he said, can I, because we basically did whatever we wanted when we wanted. Then Andy started. Yeah, how old are you? He said, confused. Age is not student to teacher conversation. Mr. Fuentes nodded. That's when I read him a bit more. He was like the other teachers. I thought he would be cool. We all laughed except for him. I can easily find your first name and age. And well, pretty much anything. Have you ever heard of the internet? I laughed harder in my high-pitched voice. The bell rang. Ollie and Andy followed me to English, which we had next. We sat down in 3 empty desks in the back middle. We normally misbehave all the time, so we started by talking in class while the teacher was talking and we ignored him. Want to ditch school after this class? I'm bored already, Ollie said, in his accent that most people didn't understand, but the teacher, or should I say Mr. Fuentes, heard him. I noticed we got the teacher's attention, so I nodded for Andy to say something. Yeah, sure, sounds cool, he said in his deep voice. Alright, see you guys there. I knew the teacher was listening, but I didn't say where because him listening was already the nosy type. We had a special hangout for ditching classes. Kellic, Ollie, and Andy, may I speak to you outside for a moment? Mr. Fuentes said from the front of the class. I rolled my eyes. Seriously already? All we did was talk about ditching. I thought we would have one non-strict teacher in this school. He doesn't seem like the strict type. He just has to act strict to keep his job. We made it to the hallway. Alright, what is it? Andy growled, not an angry growl, it just sounded like a growl since his voice is so deep. You were talking during my class. That's kind of alright, I can already tell HES easy going. I guess that's cause HES also a guidance counselor. But I heard about you guys ditching school, which is obviously against school rules. He said, acting strict. I can tell when people act. Sure. Okay, I said sarcastically. I rolled my eyes as I sighed. The sigh blew a lot of air out of my mouth, making my hair in my face go up for a moment, then land back on my face. Just throw the detention already. Ollie was getting annoyed. I can't physically give you guys a detention unless I see you leave the building while you're supposed to be at classes, Mr. Fuentes said. Then don't. I gave an evil grin. Mr. Fuentes rolled his eyes but tried to stop rolling them so he can act cool with us. He was quite smart. He knew if he acted cool that he can probably get into why we're such troublemakers. We dealt with many counselors and teachers before, so we know. A few minutes passed while we were in the classroom so we can finally leave. We normally hid under the bleachers when skipping, but people found out, so we went to the old shed people put random sports stuff in once in a while. Mr. Fuentes couldn't go out of his classroom, so we didn't have to worry about him following us. He seems very nosy already. I entered the dark shed that only had light from the sun in the window. It was very crowded and dark with just enough room for us to sit. What do you think of the new teacher? Sometimes Ollie mumbles off with his accent so it's hard to understand him, but it was fine. Not sure yet. By reading him I can tell he is nosy, smart, and a bit of an actor. I laughed. Really, what do you mean? Andy was a bit confused by the last part. Acting to be cool to just butt in. You know, I trailed off. I got a flashback of the older counselors trying to make us speak when we had nothing to say. They eventually gave up. They nodded. Then we got back to being trouble. Ollie smirked, the type of smirk when he has something he shouldn't have got away with, something he shouldn't. Or anything he shouldn't. I smiled formed on my face. What you got? I asked. You gonna share? Andy butted in. He laughed. Of course, mate. He brought in some weed. We all started getting high. This was a pretty much daily thing. We would all just get high in a secret place and skip classes. No one really cared if we showed up to class. It was quite rare if we did. Andy is the most overthinker out of the group since he is the smartest of the group. So when he gets high he says the most funniest shit trying to be smart about it. You know. Don't you ever think about being a teacher? I mean. Yeah, teachers suck, but like. You have control over others. Andy bit his lip. Don't we already have fucking control? Ollie gets a bit aggressive sometimes when he's high. I just laid there listening to their voices. Getting high made me calm. I just stared up at the ceiling quietly. I mean, yeah, right now we are breaking rules." Andy was about to rumble on, but we heard footsteps near the shed. "Bloody hell, Andy, shut up," Ollie whispered as he was stuffing the weed into his backpack. I just continued staring at the ceiling like there was nothing going on around me. The steps eventually gone farther, but we decided to get out and run back to the school anyways. Yes, we entered school high. Bad idea, but we are bad. I grinned at my own thought. Andy started randomly kissing girls who walked by in the hallway if they wanted it or not. Ollie's flirting high side started to show. He put his arm around me as we walked. Ollie and I were gay. But secretly. It was kind of like Ollie and I were still experimenting cause we weren't quite sure yet. Andy seems 100% straight, although sometimes it could be like an 80%. Like when he bit his lip in the shed. After talking about control, I couldn't tell if he was hinting something at us. Ollie took his arm off of me and held my hand. I smiled and got lost in his hazel eyes. Once again, though, I wasn't really open about stuff like this, and I wasn't so sure he was either, so I stopped holding hands quickly. He whispered in my ear. "What's wrong?" His whisper was a bit gentle. It sent shivers down my whole body. I bit my bottom lip. Nothing," I said lowly. "Just, you know. People, I was hinting that I didn't want this flirting stuff public." He leaned in on my ear again, his hot breath blowing on my ear. "You're cute when you're nervous." He bit his bottom lip. The bell rang, saving me from this situation. I rolled my eyes when I remembered it's guidance time. Since everyone at this school is considered crazy or trouble, we have guidance as a class, so they try to figure out what's wrong with us. I felt more comfortable at least having it with my group, but now we had it separately. "Happy to see you," Mr. Fuentes smiled as I entered, sighing. He quickly changed his expression. "Is something wrong?" Already I knew I couldn't deal with this counselor shit. It was all about feelings and secrets and privacy, just trying to know my every move. "No. I'm completely fine," I said sarcastically. "Okay, well. As your new guidance counselor, I've read the files on you and your two friends." I interrupted him before he got to say anything else. "Wow. Very nice of you, sneak through my personal files about my friends and I without asking." I was once again sarcastic and sassy. He ignored my comment. "And, it was quite the book," he joked, meaning our records of everything we do wrong is long. I didn't laugh. "Alright, so my job here is to see why you guys, you act like this." I raised an eyebrow. "I changed to you because your friends aren't in this room, therefore I can't really bring them up. I will talk to them separately later." "Okay, alright. Just get to your stupid questions already." I rolled my eyes. I hated the questions. "I was thinking we can get to know each other first, to be on good terms," he said. I sarcastically asked blank questions like, "What's your favorite color?" "Red," he smiled. "Yours?" "Blue," I smiled back. He decided to send a basic question back because he didn't want to get deep and personal yet. "Favorite?" He couldn't really think of anything. "Can we just get to the annoying, personal questions already?" I was being impatient. I never really answer personal questions anyways. "How's school?" he asked. I can tell you he was starting off easy to try to get into my feelings first. School was a smart place to start. "School sucks, Dick." I made his eyes wide at the last word. I chuckled. "I love making people feel uneasy." "That is highly inappropriate. Please change your language." He got all mature and teacher-like. He took a quick pause. "And why does school suck?" "Dick," I added again to make him more violated. "Kellen, can you please?" I interrupted him. "My friends are only going to be worse when you have them." I laughed because they were the worse troublemakers than me, but yet they put me in charge. He just nodded. "And why is that?" I can tell you he was trying to get something out of me asking about my friendships. "Because they suck, Dick." I joked around, actually getting him to giggle, but he quickly stopped to be more professional. Kellen, please stop with your little jokes. I mean, joke all you want, but make them appropriate. All I did was grin at him. He continued. So what's bad about school? I decided to give him some answers. Just school, the teachers, the rules, the classes, the work. I basically just go for my two friends. He nodded. Instead of writing anything down, I can tell you he was just fitting it into that smart brain of his to remember later. How is your friendships going? Great, I said shortly. You seem to get in a lot of trouble with them. He raised an eyebrow. I know, that's why we are at this school, I laughed. The bell rang. I got up out of my seat, exited before saying anything. To be continued.